This video is partly sponsored by NVIDIA and Scan Computers. Nope. What have I done? There we go. I didn't break it. Now, I wish I could say I built this myself, but if you're familiar with my channel or my PC videos, you know that I'm not capable of anything like this. In fact, it's one of just 2 PCs in the world. I was going to say it's one of a kind, but there's 2 of them, so that doesn't really work. But this was actually built by Scan Computers and their 3XS build team, which apparently has a royal warrant from the Queen. So if this is good enough for Liz, then I suppose it's good enough for me as well. Now, as you can see from the not so subtle marketing down here, this is kind of in collaboration with Xbox Game Pass for PC and also Gears Tactics. This is actually one of the first PCs to have a custom water-cooled RTX 3080, so I'm really interested to see what this does to the temperatures. I've tested the Founders Edition, a ASUS TUF version of the 3080, and now we've got this guy, so we'll be running some tests later on to see how much cooler this is. We'll come back to the rest of the specs in a minute, but I really just want to talk about the design of this thing. I've never seen anything quite like this. Obviously, it's Gears of War inspired, or Gears Tactics, but we've got this steel frame on the top and bottom, which I guess has got some sort of patina on it. I'm not sure what they call it, maybe an acid wash to give it that sort of rustic look. Probably either, I don't know, laser or water cut this Gears of War COG logo, and then actually 3D printed this little image in the center. I don't usually get that excited about cable management, but if we spin this round slightly, it's not just the front, it's not just the facade. They've done an awesome job at the back as well with this sort of black and yellow sort of color scheme for this build. So this is the default color. We've got sort of yellow, black, and red kind of theme going on, but you can customize the RGB lighting through the IQ software and also the ASUS Armory. But obviously this liquid is yellow, which either looks like alien blood or some sort of custard or something. So it kind of works having this yellow lighting theme. For me, it's really the sort of labor of love that they've put into this, because there's a little hand sort of painted bumper thing tack on to the end of this card. And also you can see this little reservoir pump for the liquid here. You've got this sort of, well, it's plastic, but they've really put some time and effort, painted it to make it look rustic and kind of beaten up to really go with this theme. We get so wound up in benchmarks and frame rates, but we kind of forget how PC building can be really fun sometimes, and I love what they've done with this. So we've got a 360 rad at the top here, and then 3 120 fans at the front, so we've got a lot of airflow. Obviously, we've got this big metal plate at the top and front, which isn't ideal for airflow, but we've got these sort of vents as well here. And of course, the main parts of it, the GPU, the CPU, are water cooled. And you've got the reservoir up here, pumps into the CPU, and then you can see all the nice liquid taking that heat away from the 3080 here. And then it goes underneath, down by the PSU, and starts again. So specs-wise, we've got the RTX 3080, and from what I can tell, it's probably an ASUS card. I think it's made based on the TUF version. Obviously, they've taken off the fans. This has got a water block on it. We've also got a Intel 10th Gen i7 10700K, which we've overclocked to a 5.1 gigahertz across all cores. It's an 8-core chip, 16 threads, of course, just 16 gigs of RAM. That's something I might upgrade myself. We've got a twin Corsair Vengeance 3600 megahertz RAM. And then, of course, this is all based on a ASUS ROG Strix Z490 board. Powering everything, and behind here we have an 850 watt Corsair PSU, and we've also got 1 terabyte of storage through an M2 SSD. So with that spec, and then of course all this custom everything really, how much do you reckon it would be? Well, I went on Scan's website, priced up all the components individually, including the case, and it came out at about £2,200 or so, which is I think about $2,600, but that's before any of this, before the labor, before the sort of custom, the materials. You know, they must have put a lot of hours into this. We're probably looking about £4,000. And cool transition. Did that work? This is Tom from the future jumping in here with a quick message from the sponsors for this video, NVIDIA and Scan Computers. Have you ever wanted to stream your videos or games? It's not something I've really tried before, but with NVIDIA's new broadcast app, you can basically turn yourself into a bit of a professional streamer. Just have a look at that. There's not even a green screen. So you can get all your hardware, so your PC components, your fancy new RTX 30 series graphics card, even full PC systems, and of course streaming extras like key lights, decks, mics, and webcams from Scan. Then, thanks to the newly released NVIDIA Broadcast app, it's so easy to turn your living room, office, or gaming space into a proper home studio. And what I can do is go to the microphone, for example. I can actually then use the Broadcast app to reduce background noise, so if I've got air conditioning, fans, or a loud partner. But I think what's most impressive is what NVIDIA Broadcast can do to your camera, to the video. If I start with background blur, straight away I've got a really nice depth of field, and I can adjust the strength here if I want that sort of bokeh blur to be even stronger. And that's just the start. I can also replace the background. Again, if I enable it, I've got my old Chap logo behind me, so I can stay on brand, or I can even remove the background completely. Finally, we've got auto frame. I can adjust the level of zoom here, but it crops it a little bit, and then it'll actually track my face. We've got face tracking. So if you want to give this a try yourself, then I'll leave links below for everything you need from Scan Computers and also the NVIDIA Broadcast app. And then, as I say, for free, you can do all this. So no ultimate PC video would work without a bit of Crysis. Can it play Crysis? Obviously, this is the remastered version. We're getting about 39, 40 FPS, roughly. This is obviously at 4K, maxed out, can it play Crysis settings. So this is as intensive as you can get, really, outside of maybe Flight Simulator. But actually, I think more interesting is not just the performance, but actually the temperature. We've got the CPU at about 77, 78 degrees, but the GPU is 64 degrees Celsius, 65, which is actually remarkably low. So I've got an all-core CPU overclock up to 5.1 gigahertz and a pretty decent GPU overclock as well, meaning that in Flight Sim 2020, with ultra settings at 4K, I'm getting about 46 frames per second in my standard landing challenge, which is about 10% faster than I saw with my Founders Edition 3080, and that was actually paired with a more powerful i9-10900K. In fact, across all the games I tested, the overclock got me an extra 10 to 15% higher frame rates, so it's well worth the effort. Now, when it comes to liquid cooling, obviously it's all about keeping temperatures low, and from the off, things look pretty promising. At idle, the CPU sits at just 31 degrees Celsius. So for a bit of context, we actually ran the 3D Mark Time Spy benchmark on this PC, and then my other one with the Founders Edition 3080 and the Asus TUF 3080. Of course, there are other variables. It's not an exact like-for-like PC, but it'll give us an indication of temperatures. And actually, we found that the Founders Edition was averaging about 73 degrees Celsius. The TUF card with the 3 fans was actually 64 Celsius, so quite an upgrade in cooling. It was quite a bit cooler. Whereas we measured this guy averaging 57 degrees Celsius at stock, so a little bit cooler than even the TUF version of the 3080. And it means that you do have that little bit more headroom if you want to go crazy with your overclock in terms of sort of temperatures. With FurMark and Prime 95 running in parallel, I saw 88 degrees Celsius on the CPU after 30 minutes and 75 degrees Celsius on the GPU. Though I did see some throttling of the CPU, but it was in line with what I expect even without the OC. I think my main criticism of this build though is that it can still get quite noisy, even at idle. What I find really interesting about this is it's not like a completely over-the-top PC. I mean, we've got 16 gigs of RAM, we've got the 3080, not the 3090, but they all sort of make sense for a gaming PC. It's not wildly over the top, but really this is kind of like the best sort of high-end gaming PC you could get with some very fancy cooling and a nice custom build paint job. So this is Gears Tactics, obviously, and also Gears 5 and loads of other games. They're all available on the Xbox Game Pass store, which is kind of like a subscription service, and there's tons of games on there which you can play. One thing that I would love for you guys to tell me is if you could have your perfect custom PC, you can have like a machine cut, water cooled, super fancy PC of your own, what game would you like to have it based around? I'd love to see like a Cyberpunk 2077 or even maybe a Final Fantasy 7 kind of setup. I'd love to see that. And also, of course, let me know what you think of this thing. Do you like the look of it? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And if you do want to help me get to that 1 million subscriber mark, I'm like this far away, then don't forget to hit that little subscribe button below. And I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat. But for now, I'm going to play a bit more Gears Tactics. If I can work out how to play it. I haven't been paying attention to the instructions.